So we are just getting into the last step of our day, and we would like to welcome, with a big round of applause, Mr. Mogobe.
Dumelang. Some of you are fans of Vuzi here. Ratauri Dumelang Bazalwana. Dumelang Betsu. My objective in talking to you is the same as always when I talk to audience. I want to enthuse, I want to inspire, I want to energize and empower the people I'm sharing with. And by show of hands, who wants to be enthused, energized, empowered? Okay, great. So I hope I'll be able to do that. And I just want to make a special request that we start a conversation, me and you. And here's my business WhatsApp number. You have my permission to take that number and to start a dialogue and to communicate with me and establish some kind of relationship going forward. The full name is Mogobe. I'm the founder and CEO of Mogobe Group of Companies, which is an entrepreneurial entity which deals in a broad-based section of enterprises, which we'll get to deal with maybe if time permits towards the end. I'm hoping that the first part of our conversation should be about the theory part, and then the second part should be about the practicalities, the nuts and bolts, the nitty-gritties of entrepreneurship in terms of the things that we do. So on the theoretical side, I'd like to tell you that I'm a product of two kettle posts. I say to people I'm a product of two kettle posts in the sense that I started my life, my formative life, staying with my grandparents in Kanye, and we used to go to a kettle post called Makatanyani. And one of the memories that are etched in my brain is how we used to get up. We used to go to the kettle post on a Friday and get up on a Monday morning and travel a distance of about 30 kilometers in the winter. I like to tell people, and those sort of formative experiences were very good for me because the first 10 years I was in a family where there was a single parent, in the sense that my parents were not yet together. So that really helped me, that experience of staying with my grandparents, in terms of developing some kind of resilience in me. Then, of course, after age 10, my parents reconciled and got married. And although in legal terms I was a bastard, I was de-bastardized. And that word is just a legal word. It just means that your parents are not married. But of course, it's a Victorian word. Now we just say you're a product of a single household. So I was fortunate enough when my parents got married. I then got used to another kettle post, which is now Mahumalebi, which was 80 kilometers beyond Jwaneng. We used to go there literally every weekend, and every school holidays we were there. And the experiences of living in that kettle post environment, communal farming and going those long distances, going up and down, those experiences I come to realize, just like Steve Jobs said, that sometimes you realize backwards. You only notice when things have happened, what were the key events. I find that these were the key events that were helpful in developing that entrepreneurial muscle. In the interest of full disclosure, let me at the outset mention that I'm a practicing Seventh-day Adventist Christian. So when I was invited to talk today, I was a bit reluctant because I might be seen to be working during the Sabbath. So I rationalized it in my mind that what if I do something special during the Sabbath and also share my faith? So that's what I'm doing, but in sharing my faith, let me go a little bit further. And let me say to you that entrepreneurship is biblical. Entrepreneurship comes from the Bible. If you look at all the greats, whether it's Abraham, whether it's his progenitors like Isaac and Jacob, and you go right up to the time of the apostles, you see that they were engaged in the enterprise. They were not employees as such, but they were engaged in enterprise, and they were involved either as entrepreneurs, and these days I'd like to think I'm talking to not just entrepreneurs, but intrapreneurs. But anyone among you who has watched the Nuggets of Wisdom will know that I'm targeting intrapreneurs as in people who work within a company, as opposed to entrepreneurs who are people out there making a difference through their own wits, surviving in terms of blood, sweat, and toil out there in the marketplace. I get it. So if you are with me, say, yeah. I nearly said amen, but I realized maybe that might be pushing it a little bit. But just to demonstrate how crucial entrepreneurship is and is biblical, let me talk about the story of Joseph. You know, we all know the famous story, thrown in the pit, ended up being a slave to Potiphar, became the head of Potiphar's household, was tricked into a situation where the wife of Potiphar wanted to sleep with him, ended up going to the dungeon, and then escaped from the dungeon. Cutting the long story short, a day came when he appeared before Pharaoh, when the day of destiny came, when he was moving from being a slave, being a prisoner, to becoming a prime minister of Egypt. Egypt was the biggest part of the known world at that time. Egypt was comparable then to maybe, let's say, the United States. It was the center of the world. But when he was appearing before Pharaoh, very, very important thing happened. And I want to quote straight from the good book because I don't want you to think that I made it up myself. Because it's classic entrepreneurship, it's classic survival as an entrepreneur. And I'm taking full advantage, Mr. Organizer, because you grabbed me during Sabbath, so I can easily share this message in church. Okay? First, God has given us the power to share, to create and share wealth. I get that, we accept. Yeah, if you need a scripture for that, it's Deuteronomy 8:18. I'm not going to dwell on there. He has given you the power to get wealth that you may establish his covenant. So it's a prerequisite that as long as you are on this earth, you recognize that you've been given life. That existence is a power also to create wealth, right? So that's the first thing we have to recognize. Now, going back to Joseph. Pharaoh, remember, had these wondrous dreams. You know, in short, one dream involved a whole bunch of cows appearing out of the Nile, the big fat ones, and then a whole bunch of skinny ones also coming out of the Nile. And weirdly enough, the skinny ones swallow the fat ones. And it troubled Pharaoh, and the dream kept happening over and over again. The other portion of the dream was about the harvest, the cobs coming all skinny and getting eaten away, right? And then after Joseph had said, this is one dream. This is one dream, it's not two dreams. And you've been very fortunate, dear Pharaoh, because God has helped you to foretell the future. And then after he has explained to them that there's going to be 7 years of drought, followed by 7 years of plenty, he then goes into detail. And let me tell you, these 7 years of drought, followed by 7 years of plenty, is still happening now. They call it fancy words like, oh, this industry is cyclical. Oh, we have booms and busts. We have troughs and ups. There's valleys and mountains. They're fancy things that you read from these experts, they call it. But it's the same thing. It works out more or less 7 years of plenty, followed by 7 years of drought, and so on and so forth. So as an entrepreneur, you have to position yourself for the hard times. You have to position yourself for times such as this. And why I say all this is scriptural, because he says, Genesis 41, verse 34 up to 36. Pharaoh is saying, what do I do about this? You just interpreted the dream. What is the solution? He says, let Pharaoh do this. Let him appoint officers over the land to collect 1/5 of the produce, which translates, for those who don't know maths, 20%, of the land of Egypt in 7 plentiful years, and let them gather all food of those good years that are coming and store up as grain. Here's a biblical principle about saving and investing found in the way that Joseph helped Egypt prosper during the time of famine. Collect 1/5 of the produce. That is the key. And it's not complicated. We tend to overcomplicate it. And if you read, books such as The Richest Man in Babylon, if you read books such as Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, if you read all the fancy books, if you go into John Maxwell, if you go to all these personal development experts, if you go to even the great Zig Ziglar, and you dissect and go deep as to what is the main message. The main message is that prepare for the hard times. And there's a simple formula: put aside 20% of what you earn, so that 20%, it doesn't matter whether you got $100, it doesn't matter whether it's $1,000, put 20% of that so that you can invest it or save it for a rainy day, so that it can multiply. So the amount is not, the question is that it doesn't matter what you earn. This is why we have the phenomenon of the cleaner versus the permanent secretary in Botswana. Do you want me to tell you about it? Does a timekeeper allow me to do it? Okay, if you allow me, Mr. Timekeeper, and you don't restrict me at the end, I'll do it. Shall I share the story? All right, the story of the cleaner versus the permanent secretary is like this. Every morning they get up. The cleaner's job is to clean and to make sure that everything is okay. When the permanent secretary has meetings with ministers and all the big shots, the place is nice and clean, right? The permanent secretary gets a salary that is at least 100 times. I mean, it's ridiculously more than that of a cleaner. But what happens, the permanent secretary is a big shot. Typically, they would have the first degree, the second degree, and a PhD. But they don't know anything about money. They fail this basic principle. They don't put aside the 20%. If anything, they're over-indebted. They've over-borrowed. They're in deep matata. Maybe they have 2 or 3 or 4 girlfriends. That is the reality. So their financial situation is overstretched to the limit. The cleaner, on the other hand, with this pittance of hers, she applies and gets a plot for Shah. And I'm talking real stories, so I'm not imagining this. She takes that Shah plot, and then the first month, 2 bags of cement. Second month, a few bricks, and so on. And then she ends up putting, to quote you, sir, the 2.5. After the 2.5, where she stays, she puts up other little houses in the front, and this goes on over a period of a working lifetime of 40 years. They both have to retire age 60, and they start saying, what's going to happen? Okay? And the cleaner goes to her, she's managed to raise her small hand using the little rent that's coming from these mini houses that she's built at the back. The permanent secretary on the other hand has built a massive house in Pakalane, and that is draining him, and he's probably started developing Komora gang, and what happens every Friday is he loads up his truck and maybe grabs a small house, and they go to Komora gang, and this goes on for years. He's not accumulating, he's not setting aside the 20%, he's squashing everything that he makes. And I have seen the permanent secretary, so I won't mention names, with the bottom part of the lips red in color because of the consumption of alcohol that is taking place. You wonder, was this the great man that used to refuse me my license applications? Is this what is happening to him? Okay? Simply because they did not follow this simple biblical principle. Put aside 20% of everything that you make. And believe me, you make something. It doesn't matter how poor, how debt poor you are. If time allowed, I would give you other parables and other stories from the Bible that demonstrate that if you don't do this, even the little that you are making will be taken away from you, either by the world or by the Lord himself, because the Lord gets very angry when you don't invest. He calls you a wicked servant. I don't have time to talk about those parables and those examples. But what am I saying? Put aside 20% of everything that you make so that you can become an investor. If I'm talking to you, say yeah. Yeah. That's the theoretical part. I've covered it in a nutshell. After I had gotten used to these challenges of cattle posts and so on, I then became a lawyer. I love the law, I love reading, and I became a lawyer of some repute because I used to enjoy Khudiga Megaloba. And part of Khudiga Megaloba is winning cases against government and against Bodebswana and so on. That used to be my hobby. But then I realized that my hobby and both my vocation and my vacation, because I think when I call it a hobby, it was fun. The idea of leaving the home every morning at 6 o'clock and going back at 12 o'clock and getting myself engaged in the law, talking to advocates, preparing and winning, strategizing, that used to really, really enthrall me and excite me. And then something interesting happened. Do you want to know what it is? If you want to hear what interesting thing happened, by show of hands. Okay, so I'm talking to somebody. A whole group of my colleagues got together and decided we want to clip the wings of this young man. And I also became arrogant. You know, I was driving the fanciest car. I really like those suits. I used to really look almost as good as I look now. But that arrogance led me to being a little careless. I collected a little too much. I made some mistakes. The mistakes were not unreasonable. I collected collection commission from a client, from a debtor, which I was entitled to, but I didn't know the ferocity of this debtor. And so ferocious, they went to court. It went as far as the Court of Appeal, and the Court of Appeal said something nasty about me. And then all my best friends and my best buddies turned against me and said, "We gotcha." They came after me. And it's a reported case. It's in the law reports. But the long and short of it is that I used that experience. And that, I think it was God's way of saying, look, you cannot survive on the law alone. You cannot succeed on the law alone. So as I faced the prospect of losing my profession, as my colleagues engineered a scheme to have me struck off as a lawyer, I was able to use those 2 years to study. And I embraced the concept of personal development. I read and read. I came across the likes of Kiyosaki, and I built a real estate enterprise based on that. Now, that is the theory, guys. Do you want to hear the practical? If you really want to hear, say yeah. Yeah. Okay. Now, there's a thing here. Some of you may, Janet and Sekele, maybe you can block your ears because I've talked about this all the time. But maybe let me just quickly run it through it. It looks like a monster, but it's not. I call it MGG. Who can guess what it means? Hey, somebody knows about it. So this is the practical side. So it's got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 legs. And this is basically what you do at the end of the day. This thing was motivated by me going to movies with, I think, with some of my children, a movie called Transformers. And I came across an entity known as the Optimus Prime. In that movie, he was a good, monster, famous for going like this. So I then developed, like Steve Jobs says, you always work things backwards. Oh, what have I created here? What am I creating? I found that I'm creating this. At the head of this gentle giant is me, MLM, and the board of directors of this entity. We're mainly a real estate company, okay, involved in real estate, but we are multidimensional and we intersect with other areas as well. On the left-hand side is acquisition. Okay, this is like 3 concentric circles because they overlap and they represent the main activity, the engine. And then these acquisitions, and then this side we have development. And speaking of acquisitions, if any of you have a property, be it a multi-residential, a industrial, or a commercial and they want to part with it for a good price, talk to us. So because we're constantly growing. And if you know someone who's selling, talk to us. We're looking for those type of properties to develop. So we started this, I think 2000 we had only 2 properties or 2 tenants. Now at the moment we have upwards of 260 and growing tenants. So we're still an ongoing effort. So then development. What we do here, at any given time, we have a group of guys, developing, sometimes I show them on social media. Some of you may have seen it. Okay, some of you have seen the Mogobe Inc. You will visit the Mogobe Inc. Facebook page. You'll see some of the developments we are busy with. And then here, this is the belly of the beast. At the belly of the beast, I call it consolidation. I don't know if my handwriting can be read. Consolidation and management. This is like the engine of the beast where we have, before COVID, I think we had 160 plus. Post-COVID, maybe we're around 140, I don't know, because some people had to leave and some people's contracts came to an end and we had to restructure. So we manage these entities because after acquiring, you take it to the belly of the beast. After developing, you take it to the belly for it to be managed. We are engaged in things like preventative maintenance. We're engaged in things like, responding to tenants' complaints and so on and so forth. But basically, we're managing these entities, and they include Mogobe Office Park, which is managed by Janet over there. And what she basically does is help young entrepreneurs who may not be able to afford massive rentals. And you can get a space there for as little as 700 pula. It's cheaper than I thought. 500 pula, and then get yourself going. Because the idea is that we're creating an ecosystem that is able to help just about anyone in any way, shape, or form. In this connection, I have a massive announcement to make. Who wants to hear the massive announcement? Say yes. Yes. Okay. In view of the fact that we are breaking the COVID protocols here, there's no circulation. There's no proper ventilation. And what we are doing is too important. Because we are doing exactly what I'm about, enthusing, energizing, empowering entrepreneurs. In view of the fact that we should not meet here, we are breaking the law here. There's no circulation. I'm offering our conference facility on one condition, okay? On one simple condition, right? That this does not become an annual event, it becomes a monthly event. Those who support the idea say, yeah. In this conference facility, which is located at Unit 31, I'm offering the organizers an opportunity to meet like this and to have different speakers on a monthly basis. If a month is too soon, every other month. But by all means, let it not be annual, so that people can share, accomplished entrepreneurs can inspire others. We can meet like this, we can shoot the nuggets, we can do all sorts of things. But we need to inspire each other. We need to do what Americans are doing. We need to do what they are doing in Dubai. We need to do what businessmen and women are doing in China and other places to consciously, deliberately, and actively develop and push one another. If we don't push one another, anyway, who wants to know what the octopus legs stand for? Okay, just 3 people, so maybe the majority doesn't want. If you want, raise your hand and say, yeah. Yeah. Okay, here what happens, as Mr. Uteng will attest, it's Lerumo Mogobe Legal Practitioners, a law firm that I was fortunate enough to establish in 1991, and it started it all. But it's still running. Right now we have, including myself, 5 lawyers, including one of my partners, Mr. Uteng. What we do is provide legal services. Some of you guys may be getting into contracts. Some of you guys may be wanting to collect, people not paying you. So everybody will say, COVID this, COVID that, I can't pay, COVID this. Yeah, so you come to us, and also for us, we're experiencing 40% default rate in our group, you know. People are, COVID this, COVID that, okay, COVID enough, how are you paying me? COVID this. So you have to find a way, and sometimes you need a lawyer. So it's part of the ecosystem, so I've decided to keep it running. Because also, if we transfer these properties I mentioned about, that I mentioned to you, that we're acquiring, you need a lawyer to help us with that. Then restaurants, okay? We have Nonas, and we have Black. Who knows Black here? Okay. Who has actually patronized Black? I have a lot of work to do. Only 3 people. I have a lot of work to do. I want you guys to become my customers. Lelona. Come to Black when you have your meetings, and I have a massive announcement to make about Nonas. Who wants to hear the massive announcement? It's huge. It's huge. This is the announcement. At Nonas, we have sort of like workstations, areas where you can slot in your laptop or whatever device you have, even your phone, you can charge the whole day. I'm offering you an opportunity to come there, all right? To come there and to have your meetings there. If you want to be a regular, we can get into an agreement where we give you 10% of anything that you order. Isn't that a massive and huge announcement? And for as long as we are part of the Mogobe group of companies, nobody is going to chase you out saying, usalo odara drink. You know? You'll be able to work there. A lot of us, and I was talking to one of the presenters here, started off Rago di restaurant in struggle. So here's your chance to get one of the best restaurants in terms of the best ambience and spend time there and meet your clients there and do something. Isn't that wonderful? Okay? So it's part of the ecosystem. And then we have others. We have education. This one I'm not going to talk about. We have a preschool in Kanye. So unless some of you are in Kanye, we're willing to take your small children. But the idea is that there is something we're doing there where we're getting into education. And like one of the presenters said, is baby steps there. We're starting. And then hospitality. These are lodges. We have 2 lodges that are operational, one in Soroe, one in Block 6, Gaborone, and then the 3rd one in Mawu. And then we're still developing a 4th one, Kopalape. There I'm entitled to give the excuse of COVID, because if it wasn't for COVID, we'd have finished it by now. Then we're involved in philanthropy. So maybe that would come up during the Q&A time. I won't go into that. We're involved in stocks as well. We're using the Warren Buffett method of investing, which is value investing, which follows four steps. And we've been fortunate enough to make quite a bit of money to sustain the gentle giant through having one leg that is used strictly to support and ensure that we don't suffer a collapse. Then we have sanitation, which is a big one. Sanitation, some of you may have heard. Let me just see if our marketing team is doing this job or not. Who has heard of clean cities and towns? Ish. We have to do something. Our marketing is failing us. Clean cities and towns supplies skip-on containers. It supplies portable toilets. It takes away waste of all kinds, including what waste? What is the specialized waste in boxes? What's it called? Huh? Clinical waste. That's what we do, and we're based in Khabane, but we're accessible. And then, what's the 8th one? This one is the reason I'm with you today, speaking. Okay? We're trying to develop the speaking side, but the way we're developing it is not, like somebody said, about just making money. It's about raising the profile of the Gentle Giant as a whole and helping with the marketing of the Gentle Giant through such things as the nuggets of wisdom, such things as Meet the Overcomers. Who's head of Meet of the Overcomers in Duma FM? Oh, okay, no, maybe we've done a bit of work. It's been running for 13 years. I set it up in 2008, and then I've since handed it to Mr. Mazani, who's running it day to day, but it's part of our group of companies, speaks volumes. So this is how we practicalize it. Does anybody want to know what the arms stand for? What do they mean? Okay, all right. I don't want you guys to get bored and to start sleeping, you see. So I have to get your permission, before I go on and on. So this one is employees. The whole idea is that we take the employees as though they are the right hand. You know, if I have events like this, I invite my partners and my employees. Unfortunately, I still have a lot of work because some of them don't see why they should attend motivational events. Some of them don't see why they should be part of this. So out of a total of 160 employees who were invited, only 3 came. You understand? So we all have work to do to convince people, even if people are benefiting from something, even if it's part of something they are doing, there's some reluctance to actually commit. So that's the nature of the beast. We have to deal with that. The left hand, which we rarely use, we use it for balance, and we use it for, we don't, let's not say we rarely use, we don't use as much as the right hand. It represents our independent contractors. So a big shout out to them. This includes, independent builders, architects, engineers, and so on and so forth. So I think that is a presentation. With your permission, sir, I'd like to end with a joke. Okay? But I want to make a deal with you guys. Regardless of the level of funniness of the joke, just laugh, please. Because if I crack this joke and nobody laughs, guys, just imagine the embarrassment after such a presentation, okay? 4 guys, 4 dudes, One is an entrepreneur. One is an accountant. One is a lawyer, and the other one, let's just call him a carpenter. 4 guys. Now, the entrepreneur falls sick, right? He's sick and he's suffering, and the diagnosis from the doctors say, you are terminally ill, my friend. Time to go. The guy has all this money, and he brings all his friends together. These are his best buddies, drinking buddies, in fact. And he says, guys, blind. So these guys look at him, okay, so we're blind, eh? So, so this is what, let me finish the joke, please. Bear with me. And then he says, look, I have this money. I get 3 of them. He says, I have this 60,000. I'm going to give you 20,000 each, guys. Okay? I've worked so hard. I would hate to see myself going to heaven without my money. So here's the deal. I'm going to cash this. I'll arrange for my assistant before I die to cash this 20,000 each you are getting. Here's the deal. Each one of you, when it comes to viewing the cops, ask for a bit of time alone and put the 20 grand so I can go to the Pelegates with this money, right? Take it to, this is the entrepreneur, and it's serious. And they see that this is his friend, but he makes them swear, you will do it again. You will do it again. You will put the 20 grand. Then there's a deal, there's a handshake, and I think if there is even an agreement, but anyway, for a written agreement, but they agree. 20 grand, right? So that said day comes, the guy goes, and then they all go one by one, 3 of them, the accountant first, followed by the engineer, and then by the lawyer. Okay? And then afterwards they meet, sort of like after tears. Hey, our best friend is gone, man. Hey. Yeah, and then they ask each other, so how much did you give all the 20,000? Did you leave the entire 20 grand in the coffin? And the accountant says, guys, I'm sorry, with tears coming down. I'm sorry, guys, I had this debt. My landlord was harassing me. I just put 10,000. And then they go to the engineer. Did you leave the entire 20 grand? And the engineer says, hey guys, I had problems. I'd skipped, child support. I had this. So I just left 5,000. I took 15. And then it comes the lawyer. You know what the lawyer says? You guys are useless, man. You betrayed your friend. You know what I did? I signed a check for 20,000. I put the whole money there.